Hello, everybody, and welcome back. Happy New Year, even though it's like the 29th millionth day of January already, but still, this episode got back. So, yes, this is What's the Story podcast, WTS 303. My name is Danny Murray.
And I'm Graham Merrigan. Hi, Danny.
Right. Are you doing well, Graham? You well in yourself, my friend?
I am. Can't complain.
Very good. Very, very good.
I'm all right. You?
I'm freezing. I'm absolutely bitterly cold.
Oh, stop, man.
We're in
Stop.
the midst of a cold snap, as they would say.
Yeah, yeah. And as we're recording tonight, I think it's going to be the coldest night of the snap.
Mm.
And you're in kind of the Midlands, so I think
Mm.
it's going to be -6 where you are. Where we are in Dublin, I think it's going to be -1 or 2. But
Mm.
yeah, it's a cold one.
Yeah, it'll be hot water bottles and long johns for me. I can tell you that much.
Will you wear long johns?
I don't actually own a pair, but if I did, I absolutely would because it
Love it.
is freezing, man, freezing. But
Freezing.
yeah, and look, it's been a couple of weeks since we did this. Our last one's Christmas special. Thanks everyone who listened and got in touch with us, and many thanks to Gary and Paul as always. And yeah, can't wait to hear this content when it launches. But we're back, and yeah, we're
This is content.
yeah, we're back, and we're looking forward to 2024 being a bumper year for What's the Story podcast with lots to come. So
Lots to come.
we'll be
Might
just
be something really, and might be really something surprising coming down the road. But sure, we'll talk about that again.
don't say too much, friend. Don't say too much.
I won't be saying too much at all.
Yeah. Anyway, look, let's dive right in because we have a brilliant guest to kick off the year for us, making her hat trick appearance, no less. The wonderful Brianna Parkins. Brianna, thank you very much for joining us. It's been a minute since we last chatted to you, so good to reconnect, as they say.
Yeah, I don't know. How long has it been? Was it a year, 6 months? I don't know. Time is blurring
Year,
into
is it?
one.
It's more than a year. I had a quick look today. It's about a year and a half, actually. Yeah,
Wow, a
was
piss boy.
July or August 22, thereabouts. So
I'm still living in 2020. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah,
That's my internal clock stopped, and that's where I think we all still are.
yeah, definitely. It's weird
yeah.
because
Because I'm 2022 now, actually.
yeah, but I think the kicker for me, right, is like my mates who have kids, and in my head, the kids are all still like small, and then they're like, "No, mate, she's making her confirmation this year." Okay. Yeah, okay, yeah. So, but yeah, the world of freelance journalism and being a columnist with the national paper and all that kind of crack around every week, the Irish Times is banging out articles from you, which are keeping us all entertained and most recently giving us financial advice. Well, not most recently, one of the more recent, you know. Giving financial advice and everything now, which goes back to when we originally talked to you because you were telling us, you were explaining about, was it with cans and with jellies or something fucking
Oh yeah, yeah.
things.
Yeah, it was my roommate's cans of Guinness, her puppet, her sweet puppet,
Yes.
and Thuddy. I get them mixed up, and just some random jellies I found in the house. And yeah, I got Sony recently put me in, or they were trying to license that clip for the latest movie with Pete Davidson in it. And
No
it's been
way.
featured in a Netflix series. So it's kind of weird. That was a while ago, but it keeps popping up. And I was like, oh, yeah, I did do that. But it's funny. I did have a background in financial journalism and working on a finance desk. And people forget that I just think that I sort of materialized in Ireland one day. But I was like, no, I actually did have a real career. I was like, in my home country, I was a serious journalist. So people are always shocked to see me pop up on the business pages. So yeah, that was originally my background. So it's good to be getting back to that. And again, I think people always are really surprised, like you giving personal finance advice. I'm like, yeah, I was terrible at it. Like I'm the person to talk to about fixing it.
But it's true though, because like as I was reading it, I was kind of like, where was this advice 5 years ago? Why was nobody telling
Yeah.
me? Why? So thank you. Me 5 years ago would have been like sending this to people on WhatsApp groups, being like, "This is you need to read this now." Like, so yeah. Thank you for doing that. And I think like one of the most simple, right? What I fucking hate more than anything is having to ring a company and do any bill, any. I just hate having to interact with them. One of the most simple things that you had in that article was making sure that your direct debits are lined up to around payday, so then you're not fucking yourself over. If I'd had that advice years ago, I would have saved myself a lot of heartache, lads.
But,
You not do that to me.
No, I didn't, Grant. I'm very lazy and I hate having to ring companies. Honestly, I'd rather just tear my own face off than have to ring an Australian company.
A lot of the companies now have the instant chat. I know.
I hate the instant
using
chat.
It
I like the instant chat.
Well, I used it yesterday. I used it actually, coincidentally enough, financial advice, sure.ie, and it popped up. I got talking to a bloke, Alan, and then soon enough, it went straight over to email. And it was like, didn't get what I wanted to hear, but it was like starting over in about 30 minutes. It was actually about a pension, Brianna, that I didn't know I had. And I got a letter.
Consolidate your pensions, consolidate them. You're on the right path.
Yes. Well, that's what he was saying. Well, I was like, let me cash this out now. I didn't know I had this. I already have a pension.
This opening 7 minutes is the most middle-aged we have ever been. The word consolidate your pension.
No, because I have this big argument. I think it's not middle age, and I'll tell you why. So in Australia,
Superannuation.
Superannuation, right, which you know from working there. So on top of our wage, right, you get usually, I think it's up to about 10% now, but I was getting 14% when I was working for the ABC. God bless the government. So on top of my wage, 14% extra that came from my employer went into my superannuation. And I've had a superannuation account since I first started work at 14 and 9 months, because that's when you can legally start work. So I've had a pension since 14 and 9 months, and which is, you know, half my working life, more than half my working life now. And that has saved me. So all my piddling little jobs from bar work, anything I was doing minimum wage, that rolled into like 20 or 30 grand by the time that I was in my 20s, just from, you know, accruing interest, accruing, you know, the returns on the investments made. So when you're in Australia, it's not a middle-aged thing to care about your pension. You've got to care about that from an early age, because you often open one at 15, 16. Do you know what I mean? We all tend to work really young, usually at McDonald's. So for us, it's a no-brainer. So when I talk to people from Ireland in their 30s, maybe even 40s, going, yeah, I've never bothered with a pension, it genuinely scares me, freaks me out.
Yeah, it
mental,
is.
Isn't it? But see, that's a good thing though with the Australian government doing that at 14 and 9 months. I mean, the Irish government don't do that.
They're trying to bring it in, so they're bringing. I have debates about this. So like we've looked at all the systems, like, you know, Canada and Australia, and UK has like a contribution system where your employer has to kick in a certain amount. But Ireland is the last of the OECD countries to have that doesn't have an auto enrollment scheme to encourage people to self-fund for retirement. Because we're getting to sort of a position now where we're having an aging population and not enough taxpayers to pay for pensions, essentially, as we're all getting older. So all the other governments in the world have gone, fuck, we need to do something about this. Ireland is a little bit slow on that chase. And the argument I had was like, oh, we're going to make the best of all the systems. I looked at the auto enrollment, and basically if you don't have a pension and you're earning over 20K, then you get auto enrolled, but you can take yourself out of it, I think, after 6 months, which is not great. And you've got to chip in 1.5% of your own money, then your employer matches that, then the government kicks in a little bit extra on top. But if you're a low-paid, low-income worker already struggling with the cost of living, why would you give up that 1.5%? You know what I mean? The incentive isn't there. Ireland doesn't have a pension mindset. It's going to be really hard to switch people into that. For me, I think the employers need to cover pensions. You know, we have a very low tax rate in Ireland. Companies benefit from that already. So I think they could, you know, chip in a little bit towards the retirement of workers, which shouldn't be funded entirely by the taxpayer. Should be funded by the employers, at least partly.
Yeah, it's one of them where it's like you're dead right. I think the conversation on pensions over here, like, it is not something that I ever had until I was in a large corporate employer and they had a pension scheme. And like my parents had one, and I kind of was vaguely aware they had one, but there was never any, like, in school, anywhere. I don't remember anyone ever sitting down and being, museum parents are having a pension, lads. Especially not at 14 years and 9 months. Right?
Yeah.
I don't think it's even a chat about how important it is. It was just, this has existed since the 80s. And it was actually brought in because the people like, look, how could we ever afford that? Businesses, there's no way they're going to go for that kind of scheme. But it was brought in at a time that we're sort of facing now where there was huge inflation. I think it was like 20% in Australia at that time in the 80s. And manufacturing was closing down in a lot of ways. The economy, and it was sort of before the mining boom kicked in. So we weren't a totally rich country yet. And businesses and the unions couldn't decide what they were going to do because the unions are saying, look, we need to, push up the wages because everything else is costing so much. Businesses are like, we can't match inflation. So it was a deal hammered out between the government, businesses, and unions to go, okay, we're going to put in superannuation. So instead of a pay rise, we're going to dump extra money into your pension. The government then gives employers tax breaks for doing that. That money in pension pots gets reinvested into the economy through investments. The ball keeps rolling, everyone stays happy. And it has worked. It was this crazy scheme that people were like, oh shit, don't know how that's going to go. Worked brilliantly. It could be some small adjustments, but yeah, it can be done in situations where you're like, oh God, I don't know where we're going to find more money. But we're in that situation now where cost of living is outstripping wages, and unions are at loggerheads with business groups. I just think it could be done in Ireland if it really had to be.
If I can change pace a little bit, right? You mentioned the dreaded word that everybody's been hearing for the last 2 years, and nobody really knows what the fuck they're talking about when they say it. At least not none of my friends, anyway. Inflation. It's always, geez, everything's going up with inflation, is it? Everything's going up with inflation, is it? Brianna, what the fuck is inflation, please?
It's kind of tricky because inflation is a little bit different to cost of living registers and how much things cost. So you can have inflation in terms of interest. So that's when, the ECB or like the central bank or whoever controls interest rates for us, like we're in a European, we abide by European sort of bank rules, to put it really casually. So they go, yeah, we're going to try and use levers. There's brake levers and there's go levers in economy. And generally, if things are starting to cost too much and go up, they try to apply a brake by making money more expensive to borrow to try and slow everything down. So they're like, well, if we make money more expensive to borrow, businesses can't grow as fast. They'll have to, there'll be less money around. People have to drop their prices, and then it all filters down slowly. But then that's really painful for people caught in the middle whose salaries haven't caught up. Things are costing more. Now they're paying higher interest rates. It sort of affects consumers on a retail level. So when inflation happens to interest rates, everyone's money gets more expensive to borrow, essentially. But it's really good if you've got money in savings, because your interest rates and savings is meant to go up. In Ireland, this doesn't happen as much.
So the tenner I found in me jeans is worth more than if I'd stuck those jeans on me a year ago.
Yeah, you should have spent it a year ago.
Yeah. It's very confusing, the whole thing. And this is why
it's very confusing.
This is why, and just tap. Everything is just tap. And I don't think about it until I look at my bank statement and go, oh, I need to live on cocoa noodles for a couple of weeks now, and that's it.
But isn't it so annoying that like inflation will go up, cost of living will go up, but the wages aren't going up?
They can't.
Should the three of them not go up together at the same time?
Traditionally, you would think, but sometimes those wage adjustments don't happen. And also, Ireland is a very different system in that. Again, just comparing from Australia, our trade unions are maybe a little bit more organized and there's much more infiltration. So your unions will generally hammer out a deal to factor in, which is what's happening now in the public service, to factor in inflation in your pay rises. So every year you get a 3% bump automatically. I don't see that happening so much in Ireland, especially in private industries or industries that don't have unions arguing. So ideally, your wage should keep pace with inflation and you should get a pay rise every year to at least match CPI, which is your consumer price index, which is just measures how much, the cost of all your shit goes up. If you're not getting at least CPI, then you're actually getting a pay reduction every year because that same money is buying less and less and less. So if you're working for the same money for 5 years, you're actually experiencing, less money left over in your pocket than you did 5 years ago.
And has it got better in Australia in the context of that with Albanese in charge? Isn't he socialist left wing type leader?
Yeah. I mean, like we have a two-party system. So you have Labour or the Liberals, which is the Conservatives. That sounds very confusing. But what they mean is economically liberal. So they're like, we would like less.
It's like the Republicans in the US. They're not the IRA.
No, They don't really have mixed feelings about the Queen. Yeah, but like they're pretty cool with her. Actually, I don't know. Would Trump be down for monarchy? What do you? I don't know.
I mean,
I don't
if
think
he
he
was
knows
the one
himself.
being, like, if he was the guy who got to sit in the fancy chair and wear the fancy hat, he probably would be
Yeah.
in favor of a monarchy. But other than that, maybe not.
Yeah. Albanese is Albo, as he's known, because we can't.
Of course, he's abbreviated.
You're like literally Albo. Like you would hear him called that on television by news reporters. Like we're such an unserious race of people, and I forget how informal. Like I think we often have this talk between Australians and Ireland about how we're spoken to sometimes, and I generally think we come off as really thick to foreigners, and I come off particularly thick in Australia because of how casual I am. And then I'll meet like another Australian who has much more progressive career than me. I'm like, oh no, actually no, we are just informal. It is not a big dick. We come off as big dicks to other people. Yeah, no, it's been interesting to watch him respond to the housing crisis. So Australia has we kind of, especially Sydney, goes through ups and downs in terms of rentals. So when I was there in 2018, it was a really bad time. Then rent got cheaper, even before COVID, and then it's coming up and down. So our supply is going up and down all the time. We're also seeing huge amounts of, remigration happening after the borders opened. So everyone is heading over this year, not just Irish people, as we're hearing about in the news. We're also getting all of our international students back. Well, our universities are essentially funded by Asian students. So we need them to come in every year to help our degrees stay affordable. But that also means there's a lot of housing stress around the January-December period. So we're seeing that in Sydney, where landlords can put your rent up indiscriminately. Once your lease is gone in Australia, there's not that much protection. It's like the landlord could increase it by like $2,000 if you wanted to a week. There's nothing that protects you once your lease is gone. So ours now responded to that. They've made a new rule where the government will essentially, you only need a 5% deposit to buy a house now. And the government will kick in the rest in equity. There's all these other things that they're responding to. And they're responding very quickly in a way that the Irish government haven't, which is interesting. But whether it will be the right response, I mean, we have to see in 2 or 3 years' time. I'm starting to see these things come in. But it is really interesting that they've kind of been on it from the get-go. Like, you can't buy a house if you're a foreign citizen or a foreign company. You can't come in and buy up like what we're seeing here in Ireland with investor funds. There's foreign ownership laws that put that in place. Now, has it made housing more affordable? Don't know. It's still unaffordable in a lot of ways, but you're not seeing those big buy-ups of estates happen. So they kind of predicted that from the get-go, but it'll be interesting to see in the next couple of years. But so far, it's been pretty good. It's been very weighted towards, people who can't buy homes, who should be able to buy homes.
It's interesting when I hear those things purely because, like, Mero, you've been to Australia, as you've talked about relentlessly on this podcast at every opportunity that's come. Even when there isn't an opportunity, you have talked about it, right? I've never been. It's too far, and there's too many things over there that want to kill me, right? That's the way I very.
That's a lie. That is a propaganda.
Is it?
It's a myth.
You know what I'm afraid of? Like, you guys live with the HSC every day.
There you go.
And I'm like, these people have no fear. They have no fear. They just get up and they go about their business knowing that their health service is in that state. And then it's the snakes and the spiders they're worried about. Like,
you know what? It's not even the slippery little snakes, and it's not even the spooky little spiders. It's the fucking terrifying stonefish. And just you know what I mean? Oh, there's a nice stone. I'll put my foot on it. Bam, it's gone. Good luck, good night, and God bless.
I've never seen one. They only live in like quite distinct remote places. I think it's
that's why it's even more terrifying.
Common.
So it's even more terrifying because you haven't seen one, which means they're lying and they're just there, camouflaged perfectly. Terrifying.
Oh, you're back. Sorry, I lost you there for a second. They're not that common. I've never seen one.
Sorry, you just missed me ranting then about how obviously they're so good at camouflage, and that's even more terrifying. So
I never even heard of them.
Yeah, they have lots of really interesting animals that could theoretically kill you, but you don't see that much of them. All right, maybe I've just accepted that level of danger in my life, the way you've accepted.
No, but you're right. You have better chance at HSE killing you than any of these spiders and snakes and stonefish, whatever they're called. Brianna, your columns I love in the Irish Times. Often wonder after reading them, how do you come up with the topic?
I don't know. Sometimes it's because I'm annoyed about something, which I think is some of my best columns. I.e., me going off about the health service, and I don't care. I think maybe my whole purpose of being an island is to give out about the health service, until we're ashamed to do something about it. And I guess
Yeah.
I have a lot of entitlement. I do, as an Australian, I am very entitled because I know it doesn't have to be this way, and I find it so, I guess, unforgivably unfair that Irish people have to put up with this shite, to be honest, when you're paying higher taxes than I did in Australia. I just don't think, well, that's the way it has to be, and accepting that people will live in pain or live without respite care or live without the services they need, and that's okay. That's a tolerable thing we accept. Like I can't. So I think a lot of my columns sometimes come from me being really cranky. Like I know I wrote one on another level about rainy day sidewalk footpath hoggers. People have big umbrellas, as big like wanky corporate bastard umbrellas, and will mow you off the side. And like Dublin, like I have to say, like the city, tiny footpaths. So you've got to move. If you've got a big umbrella, you've got to walk on the road. Do they fuck? These people are the most entitled. It's the corporate umbrella people, as big golf ones. And I wrote a column about that. So whatever's annoyed me that week gets a column usually, to be honest. It's just me
It's
ranting
funny.
into the
It's funny about the HSE. I was whinging to Danny there before Christmas, and to a lot of my family. So when I need a new wheelchair, for example, I will phone the occupational therapist department in Dunleary, in my region, like in my area, and when I call them, I have their opening hours. This, just disclaimer, this isn't the fault of the occupational therapist. This is the fault of purely the HSE, upper management, and whatever. But since I've been a teenager and I've been doing those things myself, ringing for a service, ringing for a new chair, ringing for whatever, the opening hours are 9 a.m. to 10 a.m.
Classic opening
For
hour.
1 hour. You have 1 hour. So recently,
That's why I'm laughing, because in recognition, because it's just like, this is a sitcom. Sometimes you think things happen in the health service, and again, I'm the same with you. The people, the practitioners and the staff they're really good at what they do. I've only had good experiences once I've gotten into a service, but it's the mismanagement around them. Yeah,
oh, it's pathetic. I needed a service there just after the budget. Now we're into the middle of January. It's just after the half January, second part of January, and the service isn't still complete. And I started that process maybe 2 weeks after the budget. And I found, like, often I'll be in a meeting and work and it'll be 10 to 10. I'm like, oh feck, I'm supposed to ring. I can't ring them now till tomorrow. Then you forget. Anyway, I rang them for a service of my wheelchair, and that was grand. Spoke to a lovely occupational therapist, logged it all down, and at the end of the call, she said, "Graham, just to give you a heads up, unfortunately, our hours have been cut." I said, "How do you mean? It's 5 hours a week, 9 to 10 a.m." And she said, "I know it's not our fault, but we got word that it's now 9 to 10 a.m. Monday, Wednesdays, and Fridays." I said, "You're kidding me." I said, "So if something happens to my chair on a Monday evening after 5, I have to wait till Wednesday morning to log that." And she said, "Unfortunately." She said, "You can contact your public health nurse," but the public health nurses, geez, they won't know what to do with a fucking wheelchair. They don't know what to do with a wheel breaking. But that's the HSE in a nutshell. It's 2024 and they're cutting hours from 5 hours a week on a telephone hotline to fucking 3 hours a week.
Oh, like you couldn't. This is a sitcom. Like sometimes I wonder, like, is there cameras around? Is there fucking cameras? Because this can't be real. There's actually a really good TV show about public service called Utopia in Australia. Oh, yeah. And I just always think about these things when they're happening. And I'm like, what public servant went, yeah, this is acceptable? Like, I'd be grand. Don't worry about that.
They'll be fine. They'll be fine. People, the elderly that need walking frames, people with disabilities, they'll be fine. They don't need us. They don't need us for 5 hours a week.
She saw you fall out of your chair last week and was like, I think he can get back up. He's fine. We don't
He's
need
fine.
to.
Yeah.
It'll be grand Ireland attitude is just fucking piss boiling constantly. Just be grand. Grand. It's will it. Fucking will it.
Will it?
I feel like such a job's worth all the time because my attitude is, as someone who is a perpetual pessimist and a worrier and neurotic is all anything, I constantly assume that nothing will be fine, everything bad is going to happen, and we must prepare for this, which makes me really fun to be around. But also, on the flip side, I'm always prepared for when it does go wrong, and that's how I work. I think it's useful as a journalist because you're like, well, I need to get this investigation up. How do I get it up without being sued? So you tend to, make it as airtight as possible. But yeah, no, working under that, it's fine. It won't be fine. It won't be fine.
Yeah, it fucking permeates every bit of Irish society, but when you start to hear it involved in anything that is related to medical stuff, that's where you kind of go, I'm gonna need something a little bit more concrete than it'll be grand.
Yeah.
I mean,
but it's the 100% with the kids' operations with spina bifida in Temple Street, and they were using springs from hardware shops. That attitude must have applied there when they were like, yeah, this will be fine. 10 surgeries later, it's still not fine.
Yeah.
I mean, come on, it's pathetic. It's embarrassing.
A few Woody's vouchers lying around. Go down and get them springs there. It'll be grand.
Yeah, get those springs there. Get me 20 springs there. Like didn't they find invoices from a hardware store in the UK that the practitioner was like, come on. Yeah. Yeah. The ditch uncovered it.
I've got some favorite stories about kind of what I call like classic Irish situations. And I think it was the bridge on the Liffey that didn't open for 10 years because someone lost the remote.
They lost the key or something, yeah.
Yeah, it didn't open for like years and years and years because someone lost the remote or the button. And that is the most Irish thing I've ever had. But I love it.
The other one was
hold on, which bridge was this?
One of the
ones that swings open.
Yeah.
Like the East Link?
It wasn't the East Link, but one of those kind of yeah.
Oh my God.
That's
where the saying only in Ireland is appropriate.
Yeah. The other one was before your time, Brianna. But Maro, do you remember the time in the slime?
I love that one.
The Millennium Clock. Spent a fuckload of money on a big old clock, and within about 3 days, I was like, nobody can see that thing. The Liffey's manky. What are we going to do with it? Just take it out. Just take it out. It's not worth it.
That was like, we put it in the Liffey 2 years before the Millennium Countdown, 1998 or something.
Yeah.
Let's put it in the Liffey. Oh my God. Let's take it out.
But the spire as well, which I love, right? The spire is to me a true monument of like Ireland, and it represents to the people. Like it got built, it was meant to be for the millennium, didn't get built in time. It was late. The light at the top didn't work. All the locals started calling it like the stiletto in the ghetto and the stiffy by the Liffey. No respect for it, which is kind of what I love about not just Ireland, but particularly Dublin, and is just the inability to take anything seriously, like just to rip the absolute piss out of everyone. So to me, like, the Spire has given us a lot. It's given us something to talk about, to slag. It's a monument to Ireland. But I
don't mind the Spire.
Love the Spire.
It was the Joe Duffy listeners who made me love it even more, because like that, when it was going up, and the light issue was a classic, but the initial, like when there was talks of, will it stay standing in high winter, and the owl ones were loving that. Loving that. If it falls over, it could get guineas. It fucking could. It could wipe guineas out. Who knows?
They were asking, could there be a watchtower, didn't they? Could a spiral staircase?
Yeah, could you not do a
viewing point?
Yeah. Ireland loves a viewing point. Anything at all.
Sometimes when you listen to Joe Duffy, though, you're actually like, the very rare time that I stick that on, I do actually say to myself, and I fully know it's real life, but I still ask myself, is this real? Like, I have seen some journalists and some commentators on social media, commenting on it live, and some of their suggestions are that they're plants calling in sometimes, and someone that says a telltale sign of that is someone that says, "Hey Joe, as I was saying to your researcher there, that apparently is a
Oh,
telltale sign that that's a plant." But I do be listening and going, "Are these actually real people? Why are we facilitating this?"
Brilliant. It is.
I think
And the
they're
national,
real. They're
is there anything
definitely
like Joe Duffy in Australia?
yeah, I mean, but it's more terrifying. So we have, I guess, Australia and America are very good at culture wars, and I guess more of the UK, especially, the Piers Morgans. So our like talkback radio tends to be like immigrants are ruining the country, and one of our most famous, we used to call them shock jocks, and one of our most famous shock jocks there was criminally accused for inciting a race riot, Cronulla. Did you guys get
Oh
news of the
yeah.
Cronulla riots? That was a really dark day in Australian history, similar to what we're seeing now, with the Lewis being burnt. He basically, yeah, he was criminally accused of inciting racial hatred and inciting a race riot. So we had those ones. So I love, Joe for me is nice. People giving out about normal people. And have you seen do you know about pornos, Mary? Like, do you know what I mean? Keep him. It's national treasure. Do you know what I mean? Like, otherwise, he is the reason to keep funding RTE, and we
Yes.
should fund the RTE directly, right?
Yeah.
Because if you didn't have Joe Duffy, and some of your like mad uncles or mad neighbors, instead of ringing up him about like public bathrooms or the food trolley not being on trains, they'd be cornering you at Christmas. They'd be cornering you when you're at the shops, right? They need to have an outlet, and Joe Duffy is that man. So he is a national treasure. And if actually there's not many jobs that I would go, oh, I'd love to have that job. Joe, that job, Joe Duffy's current job,
Yeah.
is the only one that I would really ever want to take over in Ireland. That's like maybe my dream job. Is
It is.
just
Really?
I
Yeah.
love giving out. I love people
Look,
who
I
give out.
don't disagree with anything you've said there. I don't like I'm a big believer in RTE. I don't agree sometimes with the direction
Yeah.
they take in certain aspects of news and stuff, but I still believe in it as such. I
In
still
public service broadcasting.
in public service broadcasting, absolutely.
There's
Um,
something.
like the HSE, they're just mismanaged.
Yeah, but there's something very wholesome about Joe Duffy in the sense of like
So wholesome.
if Joe Duffy was talking about shock jocks, there would be people ringing in worried that it's a pair of kinky knickers from Ann Summers. You know, like that's the kind of wholesomeness it has, and just
You'd
people.
probably think that as well.
But like, there's just these little misunderstandings and little tidbits where you're kind of like, as you said, Mara, like, is this real? Are these people fucking? It's just amazing, and I love it, and I fully agree. If we're funding RTE for any reason at all, is to keep Joe Duffy on the airwaves. Pay that man double his salary. Keep him at all costs.
Don't mention salary
Yeah,
in
true.
RTE. Brianna, you mentioned there, yeah, flip flops.
I still actually don't know what a barter count is. I don't want to, but it's just that whole thing. That was a moment in time, wasn't it? Really and truthfully.
He's in Virgin Media now.
Yes, yeah.
You briefly touched there on culture wars, and we are unfortunately seeing it creeping into Irish society. There will be people saying, there will be people saying, oh, there's no party in Ireland that they represent. But unfortunately, we're seeing, particularly with asylum seekers, refugees, we are seeing local councillors from the government parties, and they're making a show of themselves. As an observer and someone in the industry, how can we tackle this? How can we? I've said on this podcast loads of times in regards to the tension, particularly the Dublin riots, makes me quite anxious. Racism gives me anxiety at times, because I find it completely irrational. And then we see people giving out about a hotel that the proprietor closed down. The government bought off the proprietor, and they're giving out about not having a hotel in their facility, which to me doesn't really make sense in terms of, I haven't been to their local hotel in about 4 years. Do you know what I mean? Now, I know different towns in rural Ireland it's different and it could be their weekly whatever. But at the end of the day, that proprietor got rid of that hotel. And we're seeing this all over. We're seeing since 2018, we're seeing about 12 properties being put on fire with rumors that they're earmarked for asylum seekers, international protection applicants, refugees. Where's this going? Is it going to stop? Is it going to are we just getting started? Is it a cycle that comes around the world every few years? Donald Trump is going to be the next president of the US. That can't help.
I mean, I don't know if it's been cyclical for Ireland because, can I just say, like, on a joking note, if not meant to joke about these things, but I love that, Irish people, they go to Australia, they do their time there. They come back and they're like, God, Australians are mad racist, aren't they? So now we're not the only racist ones, huh?
Absolutely. I was one of them, though. Hands up, I was one of them.
It's been satisfying. My boyfriend and I were joking. I'm like, wow, guess we're not the only big racists in town anymore, are we? But no, the thing is that Australia is a country built on immigrants. There'll be people who argue with me. We are completely, and from colonization to post World War II migration to Celtic Tiger failure cycles. Immigration is a really cheap and easy way to grow your economy quickly. The problem is, and there's no arguments that immigration in Australia, it's what's called like a net benefit, like it has benefited every sector in terms of boosting money and helping us become a rich country. But those benefits of immigration, they're not spread equally. So someone who owns a business or someone who owns a service provider, they're seeing more people, they're getting a better educated workforce suddenly, they're getting more people to choose from. They're also able to, more people to sell their products to. So they're making money in their ways. But in certain communities that are already struggling to get housing and to get healthcare, they're not having to what they perceive to be sharing their already limited resources. Because when immigrants come to countries, they go, like my parents, my mum, they move to cheaper areas like Western Sydney, where I'm from, which are usually working class communities. So they're at the coalface really of multiculturalism. So they're not seeing the full benefit that, say, the business owner in the rich suburb is seeing. So they get quite angry about it. And they're like, well, hang on, they're ruining our country. This is what's happening to us. So I've seen this cycle play out in my own community. And where I'm from, 60% of us are born overseas, and even more of us have one parent born overseas. Like, we're all something. So I grew up in that space, and it does get better. And, I remember the race riots when I was 10 or 11 years old. Those are people who are obviously maybe 1 or 2 generations older than me. But in my generation, we all grew up so integrated that you couldn't really be racist, because those were your school friends. Those are the people who managed the shop. That was your doctor. That was your hairdresser. So I think as time goes on and we see more integration and more multiculturalism come to Ireland, I think it will calm and settle, and we will reap the benefits from letting more people in. God, look at our, under 21 soccer team. Like, one of the reasons it's so strong is because finally we're seeing, those kids come through from all kinds of nationalities who've settled in Ireland, and it's made us stronger, on so many levels, and it will make us stronger economically as well. But I do think at that sort of, you will get the initial backlash. And I think it's been so irresponsible the way policy has been directed around not just Ukrainian asylum seekers, but also how we handle IP applicants. It couldn't have come at a worse time, where Ireland is already overstretched resources and people are already feeling hard done by. And the most dangerous thing in the world is when people feel hard done by, because that's when they start to lash out and they start to blame the wrong people for it. So I do worry, like you said, about those local councillors, because we're seeing the major parties back off and go, oh, we don't want to really get involved. But, Leo Varadkar signaled in an interview with the Sunday Times last weekend that he predicts that immigration will become an election issue. And, he's a political beast. Like, he is correct. Whenever you get people divided on an issue, those are the things that win or lose elections. So if immigration becomes one of those cleavages, and you get parties smelling blood in the air or blood in the water, and they're like, well, hang on, people will vote for us if we lean either way on it, that's when it becomes dangerous, and when it becomes a political football, and when you see it as a tactic to win elections, which I have seen in Australia. We had a prime minister falsely claim, John Howard, right before his election, that asylum seekers threw their children overboard. Now, a later review proved there was no evidence in that, but he won that election.
Yeah.
And people still feel really
See,
cranky about
that's the thing that boils my fucking
Yeah.
piss. That someone, a representative like that, like Howard, can say things like that, and people, and I truly believe, I truly blame Trumpism on that, because the whole, like, Donald Trump was able to sit on a podium and slag somebody with a disability, with cerebral palsy, a journalist, and if that was like the late 90s, early 2000s, whatever, that person would have been sacked and held accountable.
Well, this was the late 2006. So this sort of Trumpism that you're talking about, this has been around for a long time in
Jesus,
really culture war countries. And so far, Ireland has resisted that, and has sort of met, out and so Ireland has kind of met with the far right and their ideals was like, would you be well? Do you know what I mean? Like, you'd be like, give over. We've been really mature about things, but I think now immigration might be the thing that might really break us. In terms of that black and white polarized thinking, because you are seeing communities already pushed, overstretched. There are people who can't find housing, and there's multiple generations living in a house. And then you had, unfortunately, the case, of Ashling Murphy's unfair, cruel death, and her partner's family and himself making statements and referencing that, people had come to this country and they had lived in free housing. It was just all been a complete powder keg kicking off sort of perfect circumstances to get us here. So it hasn't just been, Irish people are resisting multiculturalism. It's just been a few flashpoint things and the conditions have been perfect. But those people who, are about protesting also shouldn't be pushed into, well, they're racist and they're far right, because you lose people and they don't come back. Whereas there might just be people who are concerned, who don't really understand what's going on, who've never had to, live with asylum seekers in their community, and suddenly they're appearing in the middle of the night. So they're feeling, they've been tricked into something. I think there needs to be more communication and more involvement with these communities so they can support and actually integrate with these people properly.
Yeah, and because I agree with you on the latter point there, in terms of communications. But it's funny as well though, because when general elections come up, or local elections, and and Virgin Media and RT are down in the rural areas, the locals will talk about how there's nothing in the town, how everyone's left, how everyone's emigrated. And then, as we said, immigration is perfect for rejuvenating certain areas of town. So I can't fathom the negativity of it, because in terms of no services, I've never not had something because of an asylum seeker. I've never said, oh fuck, I didn't get to go there because an asylum seeker got there first. That surely is a myth. Like,
I mean, it's kind of funny that the way also that Irish people don't conceptualize themselves as immigrants or economic migrants, which has been one of the criticisms. And, we've seen 21,000 people have taken up the working visa, the working holiday visa. And I'm like, if you don't think that has pushed up house prices in the eastern suburbs of Sydney, around Bondi, Coogee, Maroubra, if you don't think that Irish immigration has pushed up housing for local residents, I don't know what planet you're living on. Of course it does. Doesn't mean that we're going to hate Irish immigrants. Doesn't mean that we have a right to hate Irish immigrants. That's not them doing it to us. They're just trying to find a place to live like the rest of us.
Yeah.
So I think we need to reapply that to ourselves and actually go, hang on, we're channeling our anger at the wrong thing. We need to be channeling it at government. When we voted in the election, it shouldn't be the party who is letting the least immigrants in, but the party who's going to take the most accountability and commit to fixing the services that we don't have. But unfortunately, it's much easier for them to take a hard line on immigration than it is to fix already broken services. So
I think there's a weird disconnect in people's minds as well. Like, you're 100% right. Like, 21,000 people, all of us, and all those people protesting everything. They all know somebody. They all have a family member or a friend who's gone to Australia, who's gone to Canada, who's gone to the UK.
They're white though. They're white.
Well, look, you know what I mean? But I do think there is this weird thing that happens where, like, it's that perfect storm you described, Brianna, but there's this weird thing in the middle of it where those people who are concerned get wrapped up with those people who It's
Mm.
not a concern. It's an anger, and it's an anger that's misplaced. And those two things combine, and that's where it gets very powerful because it becomes very emotional. And anger as an emotion and fear as an emotion are two things that when they combine, they just fucking wreak havoc. So you're seeing these, I'm going to say, troubled people, for want of a better term, online who are using social media to amplify their voice. And you're seeing some of them, and like there was, I'm not going to say the guy's name, but all last week I just kept seeing this guy reappear on my timeline on Twitter or X or whatever. Oh, and he's literally threatening elected representatives, and he's saying, I'm going to break your face if you don't answer my questions.
How is he not being lifted?
Like this is, and he's putting these videos out, and they're being viewed thousands upon thousands upon thousands of times. But somewhere someone's going to see that message, and they're going to be like, he has a point. He has a point.
We had the public order unit do dawn raids on water protesters at 5-6 a.m. 5-6 in the morning, and there's a tweet like that threatening somebody in our parliament, and nothing done about it. How are they not arrested?
I think that comes to the whole thing when those Dublin riots kicked off, and people were making the point that it feels a little bit like those far right agitators have kind of been treated with kid gloves. And go back to the joke we were talking about earlier, where it'll be grand. I'm not trying to shit on the guards. I feel sorry for a lot of the rank and file guard either out there, but it does feel as though there's just being a kind of at arm's length with keep an eye, but it'll be grand, lads. They're a nothing kind of thing when.
Well, it is that, and that's right, because when I was, as we said there, since 2018, 12, 13, I think now it's up to 14 buildings, hotels, whatever, would earmarked for IP applicants and refugees and stuff. They've been destroyed, and not one arrest has happened. I mean, that's bonkers to me.
Yeah.
That is absolutely bonkers. I mean, I don't know if either of you saw the Fintan O'Toole article over the weekend about the Irish immigrants in England and Wales. And you'd hear people pontificating over here, racists pontificating, saying they're going to be here and they're going to be raping our kids and they're going to be robbing and violent and stuff like that. There's no evidence of any upsurge of violence or criminality within the immigration group in Ireland. Whereas when you look at the immigration, particularly men in England and Wales, the stats are there. Fintan O'Toole had it all in his article. It was a brilliant article.
Yeah, we used to have stats by nationality and what crimes are committed and how many offenders were in the population. I think that stopped around 2018, I want to say. I know the state of Victoria collected those crime stats. And you'd look it up, and I was doing a story on how sort of, the far right media or just right-wing media were talking about how immigrants from certain African countries were forming gangs and becoming violent. And I looked at the stats of who was committing violent offences, and it was and don't blame me, lads, because the Australians put this in. They categorised England and Ireland together as one group, which is not fair. But they were right up there every time. And I was like, could you not be showing me up here, lads? And but that thing around letting people in unvetted, when my mom and her family moved here, they weren't really vetted. Do you know what I mean? There was no, and we didn't give them free housing. My family were given free housing. They were given housing until they settled themselves and they found a job. And my granddad's actually flown. He already had a job when he landed. They paid for him to fly out to Australia in the first place and settled them in and gave them housing and told them what schools to put their kids in. And there was a lot of support. So this whole thing of the Irish only go to Australia and it's so hard for them to get a visa. I'm like, only in the last 10, 20 years, for a long time before that, I was like, come on over.
Yeah.
This whole vetting thing, I think it's not in.
It's a nonsense argument.
It's bizarre.
The reality.
But when you hear public, when you hear a TD Matty McGrath say it on a plinth, and he's using words like it's a colonization. He said that yesterday or over the weekend in Roscrea. He's a TD, and he's saying this is the colonization of our country and unvetted men. Why is everyone afraid of men all of a sudden?
I think there's a weird thing that happens there as well, though, isn't there? In that, like, fucking, it's just this, it becomes this little bubble, this little circle jerk where people just want confirmation bias and everything that they're hearing, and it's always scary and it's always terrifying. And you then get these mad Egypts who are demanding that they get a say on who gets to move into the area, or that even madder Egypts who are setting up roadblocks and demanding to see people's passports before they'd let them carry on their journey. Like, like I was, for all intents and purposes, I'm from Ballybrack. I moved to Portlaoise. To the people of Portlaoise, I'm foreign, right? I hate the GAA. I hate to these people. I made it like I am not one of them. Nobody down here had any say in whether I could move into this house. Nobody down here got to request my passport or got to request any credentials at all. Do you know what I mean? And here I am living amongst them in relative peace, other than GAA season when the roads are blocked up and I hate them. But you know, it's grand. Like people just need to chill.
But people need to realize as well when they're in a direct provision center or a refugee center, they're like, I've never been fingerprinted in my life. These people are fingerprinted. These people are, I've never gone to a country and my fingerprints being taken. That's for criminals, and we're fingerprinting these people. They can't be illegal in a legal system where they're taking so much levels of information for these people. It's just it's mental.
I'm conscious of time, right? But just with the whole culture
already, Jesus,
very much so. Yeah, I know. Quick, time flies and you're having fun, Graham. But just on the culture war thing, there is one that's being brewing that I think is going under the radar, and I think we need to address it once and for all. Lads, gilet versus body warmer. Honestly, it's running amok. There's lads from Ballybrack talking about gilets, and I'm not having it.
They're galettes, aren't they?
I mean, they might as well be, yeah. But it's a body warmer, or a sleeveless is acceptable.
Sorry, you're asking, are they gillettes or body warmers?
I'm saying I want to.
I didn't know this was an issue.
It's a massive issue, and as somebody who's a big fan of a body warmer, Graham, you know what I mean? I had somebody compliment me, "Nice gilet, man." I was like, "Watch your fucking mouth, you."
It's too rugby dad for me. I wouldn't be caught wearing one.
Yeah, no. That looks to me like you hate your wife. Like you look like a divorced dad.
Wow, right?
That's
Okay.
when I see them, I'm like, that's a divorced dad who like has a bitter ex-wife somewhere. Do you know what I mean? That man. Yeah.
I want to go on the record and say I very much love my wife, despite what my wardrobe might say. Right? Go on the record and say that.
You know what? No, it's terrible. Awful rugby fans have given them a bad rap. But I don't really get them. I'm like, are you cold or not? Like, do you want sleep? I don't know. What's the point of them?
Right, this is a different
armless jackets, like
yeah.
Like, sometimes you just want your.
Are you cold or not?
You know what I mean? I've got to have the flexibility in the arms, lads.
Oh, okay, yeah, no, you're right. You're dead right, because nothing worse than like having when you've got coats on and your underarms are really tight, and it's like I have meltdowns in the supermarket over this because I do. I can see it, but to me, it just looks like it's a bit like a pony club, like it's a bit equestrian adjacent for me. It's a bit weird. I think the Batuta Advocate, which is sort of our Waterford Whispers, called them especially the ones with the tech vest, the tech branding, right. They call it the wanker's waistcoat, which is my favorite term I've heard for that.
Right. I am going to have to get rid of
waistcoat.
I'm going to have to get rid of all three of my body warmers now. This is very upsetting. I brought this conversation to the table in hope of solving the Gillette issue, and now I find I am the issue. This, quite frankly, is horrifying to me.
Do you have any I think, do you have any ones, do you have a piece of clothing that when you see someone wear it, that could be totally innocent, but there's something that lets you associate it with that? So for mine, the gilet is, okay, divorced rugby dad. What is your equivalent of that? When you see someone wearing something that you're like, that's bad. People are going to think I'm slagging friend of the show, Paul Howard, and he has openly called it a wanker jacket as well. But you know those sheepskin jackets? Yeah.
See one of them.
You don't see them very much anymore.
You don't see them anymore because I think, in fairness, people have started to cotton on to the fact that you do indeed look like a wanker when you wear one.
And Paul brings it out once a year, doesn't he?
He does once a year for special occasion, yeah. And far be it for me to comment on any female appearance at all. Yeah. But I can't. I just fucking can't. Uggs. I just can't. I just can't. I know they seem to be coming back. They were there for a while, they went away, and now they seem to be coming back.
They never went away in Australia, right? And they're Ugg boots, or I've heard someone call them slag wellies, and it's never made me laugh as much. Slag wellies. But Ugg boots for us, right? Ugg boots. So the brand Ugg can't be trademarked in Australia.
Right.
So whenever it's like, oh, they're not real Ugg boots, and like, no, because real Ugg boots are $15 and you buy them off the side of a road from a man named Darren with 3 teeth in his head. That is a real Ugg boot, all right? So they originally sheep farmers were selling them on the side of the roads, and you'd buy them, and Surfers wore them, and then Pamela Anderson wore them in Baywatch. That's how they got really big. But for us, Ugg boots are like a tenner. They're $15 maybe. Then you might go for like a $50 pair if you really want to treat yourself. Usually you buy them for your mum on Mother's Day. That's cold for us. It's in May. So yeah, usually wearing Ugg boots, and you wear them around the house. We would wear them to the shops too, because we have no style or class in Australia. So you see them to the shops, but that's it. You don't see them out. You don't wear them to like big shopping centers. Tesco, fine. Into a shopping center with the boots in it, no. That's too shade too far for us. And it's always
lads wearing Ugg boots and Birkenstocks kind of gives me the creeps.
Yeah, it does.
Yeah, that's fair. That is fair. Yeah.
So for us, they're very like, my culture has become a costume, because all the statements of working class Australian fashion, Ugg boots, the mullet, and short footy shorts, that's all what posh people in Dublin are wearing now. What's going on?
Yeah. And Bogan's wearing those Aussie.
The mullet craze is absolutely sensational. It is just
it's a mullet and moustache, isn't it?
Yeah, the big dirty porn stash. Like, I'm seeing lads rocking around with D4 accents when they should be panel beaters. You know what I mean? I'm like, you look like you know what's going on.
Yeah, it's a phenomenon. Yeah, that word. It
feels wrong.
Yeah, it's I don't know.
My culture is not your costume, you know?
It's more alarming, I think, when it's like, a man in his 40s, and that's where you see the stash and the mullet combo, and you're like, you're a bit old to be on this trend, pal.
No, that's what I like. I was like, if he's got a few tattoos of his ex-girlfriend with the name crossed out, I'm like, he's legit. I'll let you have that. When you see like a ponytail dad, I was like, he's got some stories. Or a rat's tail.
A rat's tail. No, that's fucking rat's tail.
I haven't seen a rat's tail in years.
They're on the
go again. They're on the go again.
You love them?
I have a weird affection for them. It's weird again, because I'm a bogan and this is where I grew up. So when I see them, I'm like, yes, like this is fantastic. Bring it back.
Is there many in Western Sydney?
Yeah, it is very Western Sydney. That's peak Western Sydney. It's a little rat's tail hanging out the back there. So my partner is a big culture from the back arse of Tuam. GA mad. He also works in tech. So he's got the wanker waistcoats. He loves a bit of chinos. He's got like the little fleecy quarter zips, loves it. I have turned that man. He's now got a mullet. He's like got little tats everywhere. He had a big porn stash. He started wearing tiny little footy shorts and boots. I've like so rednecked him within a year or two. 4 years being together
turned him full bogan.
Yeah, it took me 4 years, but we got there. He's trash now. I'm really proud of myself.
He's trash.
Nice. That's mission accomplished by the sounds of it. And on that
note, see you with a mullet, Danny.
Man, I had a mullet when I was like 12 or 13.
Bring it back.
There was a little while there, and I went one further where I bleached just the mullet, so this part was dark and the rest of it was that yellowy piss colour that lads had when they tried to bleach their own hair. Oh yeah.
That was the Brian O'Driscoll era, wasn't it?
I was fucking styling and profiling Ric Flair, yeah.
I do like mullets on women.
Yes.
I think they're quite cool.
Yeah. Yeah.
No, they're very rare, but I've seen them.
Moustache is not something to show. Sorry, that's never joked about women's appearance. Right, Brianna, we have taken up far too much of your time this evening, but we do appreciate it. So thank you very, very much. If people want to, besides your brilliant Irish Times column, people want to check out more of your work, how and where can they do so?
Yeah, check out, just search Brianna Parkins Irish Times. You'll see my written stuff there. I also do a lot of radio bits during the week as well. So probably just head to my Twitter or my TikTok or I don't know, send me checks in the mail. God knows I need it to keep sliding
Absolutely.
from D4 with mullets. So, you know, keep my small business alive.
Deadly.
Fantastic.
It was a tangent. This was a tangent fest of a podcast that I loved.
Yeah, that's what it's all about, man. I think the last time Brianna was on, we contemplated renaming it Shy Talk. That's what it was, yeah.
Joy talk.
Yeah, we've lived up to it. We've lived up to it. Brianna, thank you very much.
Thanks so much, Brianna. See you soon.
Thanks for having me. Always a pleasure.
Brianna is one of those guests that I wish we could chat to for about 5 hours.
Yeah, because like that piss boy, and I didn't realize when you said, "Oh, we've taken a lot of your time." I was like, that couldn't be it already. That was like, I love listening to podcasts when the people go on tangents, and before you know it, it's up. But and that's what I felt like there. It was a nice little tangent, nice conversation with two lovely people. I'm okay.
Nah, you're lovely too, Graham. Don't be so hard on yourself. What I love and admire about Brianna is her ability to literally talk about any subject. She is genuinely one of those people who has such versatility in her brain that she can switch from the nonsense we were talking about to explaining really complicated things that we didn't ask about. She's a treasure.
And do you know what, Dan? Do you remember years ago it hasn't aired in years now, but remember we used to love the panel that was presented by Dan O'Brien. Like, I could see Brianna on some sort of panel show like that, because
absolutely
full of wit, full of intelligence, and always talk sense.
Yeah,
I'd see her in that Mairead Farrell role on the panel.
Underutilized in Irish media, I would say.
Yeah. And now, having said that,
she is.
The column is with a national newspaper, and it's a brilliant column.
And she does feature regularly on a national broadcaster as well. But still, she should have her own show on a national broadcast. Do you know what? We talked about it with her. Oh, Joe Duffy, hang up the mic, give it a shot.
Yeah. That's her role. But no, I thoroughly enjoyed that.
Yeah, brilliant. Really enjoyed it. Really enjoyed it. Big thanks to Brianna, as always. And do check out her work. You won't regret it. Mero, a good get in the bag for our first one back of the new year.
I'll see you in March.
Year of the Dragon for our Chinese listeners. Happy Year of the Dragon coming up to you guys.
Lovely.
I don't know what it is. It's probably Irish. The Irish one is probably Year of the Rooster Potato, I'd imagine. Something like that. But yeah, that's it for this week. And we will be back probably not for about 2 or 3 weeks. That's why we do this now. Plus I'm going on holiday. We didn't think this
you're pissing off on holidays. If I can get someone for next Thursday, we'll hear yours next week.
If we can get something in next week, we will. But as the old cartoons would say, tune in next week to find out. But Meryl, where can people listen to other episodes? They want to go into the archive. Grant, where can they go?
Into the archive, you can go to WTSpod.com, or you can search on any podcast provider. I use Podcast Republic. Occasionally I'll use Spotify, but you can get us anywhere and everywhere you get your podcast. You just search WTS Pod. He's Danjo Murray on social media. I'm Merrigan Mania on social media. And if you want to hear us next week, tune in. Until next week.
Lovely. Bill Bus galore, Graham.
There is.
Full hearts.
Can't lose. Lose weight.